All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another segment of HR Heretics. We are going to bring back Dear Heretics. And here we go, Kelly. So, Dear Heretics, I'm embarrassed to admit this as an HR leader, but I just don't feel confident or smart when it comes to equity. I recently went through a new job negotiation and didn't feel prepared regarding equity related questions to ensure I was getting a great offer with meaningful upside. Can you talk through or role play how you have done this and how it should work? Questions to ask, tips to make sure I can get the best offer. So, Kelly, this is a pretty meaty topic here. What's your take?
Oh my God, this is a great one. I fucking love this topic because it is one that so many of us, and honestly, especially HR leaders, Nolan, they just really don't understand the nuances. And I know you have stories around this, even you personally. And folks are like, oh my God, like, I wish I would have known this or been smart about this 10 or 8 years ago when I negotiated this offer. And I think it's always been this kind of black box thing in the background, Nolan, that not a lot of people know how to work, and it literally could cost you millions of dollars in upside. And it's really good to be smart about this. So this is one of the things, and I don't know everything, but this is one of the things that I get the most joy out of unveiling the truth for people so they can be smart about it.
Totally. So, like, before we get into this thing, I was one of those people, right? And so, Kelly, you know this story. I think I may have told it once before, but for those of you who haven't heard it, when you see my profile, like, oh, Nolan was the 50th employee at DoorDash, like he must be mega rich. Well, turns out I didn't ask the right questions when I started. And then my exercise price was higher than I expected. And so when I went to exercise my shares when I left the company, it was going to be a $75,000 check. And like, guys, I came from nothing. So 75 grand for me, like even when I had a job at DoorDash was like more money than we had. And oh, by the way, that was every dollar we had in our bank account. We ended up using that for a down payment on a home. And like I'm fine, but I walked away from $8 million at IPO because I couldn't afford the exercise. So I think this is actually a great topic to get into, Kelly. So Kelly, let's start with your kind of like checklist. So say I make an offer to you and I want you to be my chief people officer, right? And we're just talking about the equity piece here. So like we're not going to talk about how cash plays in and shit like that. It's already complicated enough. How are you processing the offer?
Yes. So let's talk through it. My first question is, so let's just pretend that you offered me a million options. Okay. My first question is, that's great, Nolan. Thank you. What is the total shares outstanding? Right? Meaning
The fully diluted share count.
the fully diluted share count, because a million options could be really great, but it could also not be really great depending on how many options they've already given away that are out in the ether, right? And the math there, the other way to ask that is what percent ownership does that million shares represent in the company? So those two things are the same. Just because that confused me for a long time. It's simply, what is the grant they're offering you? Divide that number by the number of fully diluted shares, meaning all the options they've already given away. That gives you your ownership in the company.
Correct. And there was a very large Utah company, Qualtrics, that used to only give people the share, like the number of shares, and would not tell you any other information. And so you had no idea. And by the way, I know this because candidates told me, and also my wife got an offer from Qualtrics way, way back in the day. And so if a company doesn't disclose that information, major red flag. Kelly, from there, what are you doing?
That's a big deal. From there, I am asking about the 409A valuation, which is synonymous with strike price. Okay, because this is actually a big deal. And a simple way to say it is, if the 409A valuation is $5, for example, the strike price is $5 per share. What that means is you have to pay out of pocket $5 for every option you get.
So in your example, $5 times 1 million options in order for you to own the option.
That's correct. So people are like, oh my gosh, I'm getting 1 million options at a $5 strike price. I'm getting $5 million in equity. And it's like, okay, no, you are only getting value of equity for anything above that $5 strike price. So the only way you're going to make money in this company is if the company valuation grows and the stock is worth more than $5.
So the other thing to consider, so you should definitely ask about the 4NNA/FMV, right? But you should also ask about the last fair market value. That's 4NNA, FMV, strike price, all the same thing. Now, you should also ask about the last preferred price, and that price is what the investors paid. So if you think about it like this, investors just paid a $150 million valuation on the company, right? But the strike price is typically about 1/3 of that, right? And that's what you should be looking for, is like anything like off there, anything outside of, call it, the 20 to 40% band. And it changes as you get later stage. So if it's later stage, it will be actually closer to the preferred price, which is what you're talking about. But that's the other thing to note, which is like, how much did the investors pay at the last round? And then the click in there is like, well, who are our investors? Because if really smart people are paying high prices, that's typically a good signal.
Yeah. So this is a pro tip, and this is something that I've seen that differ by company. Some will do it, some will not. It's really important to know about it either way. Let's just say that the company you're offering me 1 million shares, Nolan, at a $5 strike price. The preferred value per share, let's say, is $10 at the last valuation. So what that means, everyone, is they're saying, we're giving you 1 million shares. It was $10 per share value at the last valuation. And you're like, oh my God, that's great. That's $10 million. It is not $10 million because your strike price is $5, right? So your value just got cut in half. A lot of
At today's value.
At today's value, right? Because you have to pay that $5 to then get the $10, which means $5 net value. So a lot of people confuse and their eyes widen when they hear the last preferred share price was $10, because they forget that there is a delta where they have to pay out of pocket to get that $10. Negotiation tactic. A lot of people will say, that's wonderful, but I want my offer to be based on the net value. Like, I don't want that to be cut in half. So if you want me to join your company, you need to offer me the share count today that is using a $5 value, which is the net value. Does that make sense? Like, a lot of people don't want to fall for the trap of forgetting about the out of pocket. They want to solve for that out of pocket with the offer, which is called the net value.
And the next thing to consider here is, can you actually come up with this money? So, everyone talks about golden handcuffs, and this is actually exhibit A of when it comes into play. And golden handcuffs aren't actually a thing if you can exercise your options, because you could leave whenever you want. Now maybe there's like significant vesting on the back end, and like that's another version of it. But the one Kelli and I are talking about right now is like, in this example, over 4 years, it's going to cost you $5 million if you vested everything to exercise these shares. And so say after 12 months, right, you've hit your first cliff, and now you've vested the first tranche. So it's still going to cost you $1.25 million to leave with your options. You can decide to leave without them, but then you are forfeiting them, which is kind of like what I did at DoorDash. And so depending on how you feel about the company, this becomes a very big financial decision for you and your family. And that's the other thing to really consider here, is like, given that if we're talking about options, because you have to have this cash outlay, you have to put skin in the game in addition to your time. And so I think a lot of people miss this, right? People don't actually like think about it tangibly and don't have conversations with their partners or their families or whatnot about what this actually means. And you should scenario play. Okay, if I leave in a year, this is what it's going to cost us to walk away with these options of which I am trading my time for. I mean, that's part of the startup game, and that's how people get wealthy in tech.
Yeah. And I wrote down, very important to ask if when you all are going through this, to help you plan for that financial burden to get value out of this, you should ask the company, what is your exercise window? Because some companies, when you leave, right, you'll have only 90 days to come up with that money.
Exactly. Most companies, by the way, Kelli, well, the large majority are 90 days.
Okay. Yes. The large majority are 90 days. And meaning when you leave that company, you only have 3 months to come up with a ton of cash to keep any options that you work so hard for, or else they're gone forever and they're worth nothing. Some companies have a longer exercise window. 10 years is the max. There's a few companies that do that. Checker did it back in the day. That's wonderful because that means that you don't have to plan to be highly pressured to shell out money to get them quickly. It also can be negotiable. So that's something to think about. Like, hey, I will join your company. I want a 2-year exercise window kind of thing.
Yeah. The negotiation point is really, really a good one. So a couple things here is Kelli's exactly right on the negotiation point. This is really where I went wrong at DoorDash. I didn't know it was negotiable. I was like, I just want to like get out of here and like I want to go to this next job and like, okay, you guys can like, and they ended up like buying back my shares at a significant discount. I wouldn't have done that if I knew I could negotiate a longer window. That's a really, really good point, Kelli. A couple of other just nuanced topics on this, which is any unexercised options that have a longer post-termination exercise window than 90 days will convert to NSOs. And so I'm not going to get into the difference of ISOs and NSOs. It's really not that big of a deal depending on where you are. Sometimes it can be, but you should look into that and know that that is the truth. The other piece here is, so say you join this company, right, Kelli, and we were talking about the FMV being FMV strike price for an A all being $5. Okay. So say after 6 months, you've been there. Now a new investor comes in or a new 401A is issued. And now that price goes up to $7. So this is really where people get screwed. And so if you didn't exercise those shares, which we'll talk about here in a second, then the way the IRS looks at this when you ultimately do exercise is yes. So say like end of year one, we said 1.25 million options have vested times 5. That's like, it's going to be $6 million. Wait, do I have that math right, Kelli?
I think so.
Right? Something like that.
Just use a million, dude, not 1.5.
Okay, now run this back. So, all right, say 1 million shares vest after year one, and the strike price was $5. So it takes you $5 million to exercise those. But the IRS is gonna come knock on your door and say, Nolan, but now the FMV strike price is $7, and so there's a $2 difference there, right? And so it's actually because $2 times a million is 2 million. You gained $2 million, and now you owe me taxes on that $2 million gain. Now, the way to avoid this is by early exercising your options. And so if you're getting in at the earliest stage of startups, I call it, say, Series B and below, I always recommend, if you want to own the equity, that you ask the founder about early exercising. Because if you early exercise, which by the way, if a company tells you no, that's another red flag. It's an obvious thing to do. This is a very easy lever for founders to pull. It's literally just a column in the board deck of saying early exercising on or off. But if you early exercise, so say you do that cash outlay early, right? And then the FMV appreciates, you don't pay the taxes until the equity becomes liquid. And that is a very big difference, because if you're walking away from a company that's seen strike price appreciation, you're going to pay to exercise the options and you're going to pay on that gain between the FMV now and where you started.
Yes.
Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors. Your workforce is your organization's greatest strength and often its largest single expense. But without the right tools, understanding where your workforce spend is going or how it impacts your bottom line can be a challenge. That's where Planful comes in. With Planful, HR and finance teams get the clarity they need to make smarter workforce decisions, gain real-time visibility into workforce fluctuations, forecast with confidence, and adjust talent acquisition plans collaboratively based on costs today and into the future. No more guesswork, just data-driven insights to help you plan with accuracy. And the best part, Planful is fast and easy to implement, so you can be up and running in weeks, not months, with minimal IT support. Plus, as your company grows, Planful grows with you, providing endless runway for strategic workforce planning at any scale. Ready to take your workforce planning to the next level? Join over 1,500 organizations already using Planful. Visit planful.com/heretics to learn more.
I must admit, I used to believe that AI didn't actually exist in recruiting or HR. That is until my friend Heather Doche, who leads talent at Signalfire, told me to check out Metaview. I got into the product and was like, wow, AI actually does exist in recruiting, and this product is sick. Metaview is the world's #1 AI scribe built specifically for recruiting. Their AI records and transcribes hiring conversations, like intakes, interviews, and debriefs, then provides perfectly summarized notes of everything that was discussed. I've seen firsthand how tough it can be to extract consistently high-quality data from candidate conversations. I've been in debriefs where interviewers told us about their feelings instead of what actually happened in the interview. And I've seen VPs and CEOs block hires because they didn't learn anything from skeleton scorecards. Metaview changes everything. With perfect notes from every conversation, your people can focus on creating a human connection with candidates, and they can save time on the busy work of cleaning up notes after every interview. But it's so much more than just a time saver, because perfect notes means perfect data. For every candidate and every pipeline, hiring teams can make confident, informed decisions, and talent leaders can finally take control of the interview process. Metaview covers all your compliance needs, works with all your existing tools, and takes less than 3 minutes to set up. Join talent leaders at organizations like Brex, Deal, HelloFresh, and Quora, and check out Metaview. Head over to metaview.ai/heretics to talk to one of Metaview's product experts. Tell them that me and Kelli sent you. Or you could just go to their website and get started for free. You'll be up, running, and AI-enabled in minutes.
My recap on that is ask for an early exercise clause in your offer and get real smart and cozy up to a tax person to understand all this. I think I just want everyone to take away that everything's negotiable. And that's something that I think Nolan and I are saying that we learned a ton, is that you see an offer letter and you don't even see these things, let alone know that you can ask for them. And that's the biggest thing that I learned, is all of these negotiable things. So here's another one that might blow your mind, which I just got when in my last role. You can ask to put in your offer letter that you want the option to be able to liquefy and sell your options certain point.
Really?
This, I mean, it has to be approved, obviously, and it might not, whatever. Asking is the first step. And the reason is, if you're like, look, for whatever reason in your life you need or you want, or like, I'm going to need more cash in a year or two. Like, I have goals or I have a family. Like, I just, and know we're going to need more cash. After a year or 2 years of tenure, I want commitment that I will be able to liquefy some of my shares. So it's kind of like a mini, secondary for yourself.
Really?
Yes. And I'm not saying it's super common. I'm just saying that you can ask for that. And it might not be possible if the company goes to shit and everything's underwater, of course, but you have it in there to be able to do that.
Wow. Okay. So walk me through that scenario just a little, because I've never heard of that before. Like, the way I would imagine it playing out is the company, and this is definitely only for executives, by the way. So when Kelli is talking about negotiation, really what she's saying, like, this is at the exec level, like anything director and below, if you're trying to negotiate this stuff, they're going to laugh you out of the room. But like, so in this case, Kelli, I'm assuming what happened was you said, okay, the preferred price is $10. If it hits 17 or whatever, 17 above, whatever, we've seen significant appreciation, and I hit 2 years of service time, then I can sell up to like 10% of my shares, and the company will buy those shares back. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. And it does get a little bit complicated just for the listener of like who buys the shares back, because if the company's buying them back, they have to buy them back off the balance sheet. Versus if we have, other investors lined up, right? So if you're timing this with a new funding round, it's less of a big deal. But like in this case, depending on how the company's doing and all those sorts of things, like this clause can trigger, and I can imagine it really pissing off a CFO if the timing isn't great.
Yeah. And look, I'll be honest, it didn't happen. We didn't do it. But that's not the point. The point is that it's something you might be able to chat about.
That's interesting. I like that.
The other negotiable piece, obviously, is a double trigger. We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah. So just to explain it to the audience, right? Which basically means if the company has a liquidation event like an IPO or a merger, and they fire me, all of my equity vests. Yeah.
Yes. Or some of it, half of it.
Yeah. There's different, exactly. There's different mechanisms within the clique. People definitely negotiate this as time goes on. I actually took a lot of shit in the episode that you and I talked about this topic. What I learned from that feedback is that for later stage companies, double trigger becomes very common. For earlier stage companies, it's less common, but regardless, if there is an M&A event, your double trigger will be negotiated as part of that merger. So it's kind of like a false security. Like it makes you feel good that you have it, but when the actual event happens, like the company who's going to acquire you is going to sit down with you and say, Kelli, like, hey, we saw this, you're good, or more than likely not. Actually, like, we're not signing this deal with the company unless you take these terms. And so people should know that it's a little bit of false security.
Yeah. Sometimes, very rare, sometimes the vesting schedule can be negotiated.
Yep.
I would definitely not count on it. I don't like doing it for execs when they come in. I'm like, everyone else has this schedule. It's really touchy, but sometimes the vesting schedule can be negotiated.
And I find that the best way to negotiate the vesting schedule is also if you're negotiating severance, like pre-negotiating severance. And I think the fairest thing that I've seen for pre-negotiated severance is like some cash portion in addition to, we'll just remove the cliff of your equity, because that tends to be like, if I fire you after 8 months, you walk away with no equity. Like as an exec, that can be a very, very big deal. And execs get fired a lot. That's kind of the way we leave the building. So that's something to think about.
Oh, what a time. So yeah, look, there's a lot of negotiable aspects here. I just, to maybe close this, I just think, irrespective of all the bells and whistles and negotiated things, and please reach out to us if you want to learn more or you want to get smart about this. I think it's really important. But the most important thing is, do not take an equity grant on face value and get excited and get all wound up over a 7-figure equity grant, because it could not be what you think. And just make sure you understand the strike price versus the preferred share price versus the diluted count in your ownership. It's really important.
Look, I'll actually take it. I actually had this debate about 2 months ago with the first employee at DoorDash. And where we both netted out is it's just not the company's responsibility. Like, I can virtue signal and say companies should do a better job and, educate their employees, but it's such a complicated topic. Like you saw in this call, I learned something from Kelli in this call. Like, and I worked at Carta. And so You just can't expect the company to educate you. This is your responsibility. It is no one else's responsibility. It's yours. And so there's available online resources. I think it's like Carta 101. They put out like a 101 through 103 series. There's a ton of information there. It's awesome. That's like the foundational level you must know. But the higher you get in your career, the more important it is that you get to the lowest level of detail on these things. And so I would strongly recommend that when you get to this level, that you bring in a lawyer to walk you through all of these different things, different trade-offs, how to think about stuff. Be careful how that lawyer interacts with the company, because I had this happen one time when I was negotiating on behalf of a company with a candidate who brought in a lawyer, and the lawyer was a complete D-bag, and I like didn't want to hire the candidate anymore. So don't be that guy, but like it is on you. It is on you to educate yourself.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't want everyone to walk away being like, I got to get an attorney. I've never used a lawyer. So like, let's not overdo that. But also talk to people that have done it. Like the online resources are great. It is great for surface area, kind of necessary but not sufficient knowledge. But talk to us, talk to other people. Like I told you, I coach HR leaders, and two of them are like, I got to walk you through this offer. I'm like, oh, this. And it's like incredible what you can get. Maybe I should put some, stuff on my website around that. I love this topic, and I think it's so not talked about enough.
Yeah, but every one of these deals is bespoke. Like that's the other thing, is like what is commonplace at one company might be this company's never. I literally had a situation today where I was talking about early exercising for me, and they were like, why would you want that? And I'm like, well, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why everybody wants this. So anyways, all these deals are bespoke. This is like really like leaning on your tribe. Kelly's feedback is exactly right. So ping us, but only ping us if you've actually done the foundational research. Do not ping us if you're like showing up like, what does this mean? Like ping somebody else.
Thanks all.
All right, see ya. HR Heretics is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Econ 102, Moment of Zen, and Turpentine VC. Subscribe, 5 stars, share it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, all the things.